जब दे साथ संगत मोए पाई, जब दे साथ संगत मोए पाई, बिसर गई सब बात पराई, बिसर गई सब बात पराई। ना को मेरी नहीं बेगाना, ना को मेरी नहीं बेगाना, सागुल संग हमको बन आई, सागुल संग हमको बन आई।
Every culture has a story, a worldview that explains who we are, what life is, and what our purpose is. Our story shapes the way we think about the world, and thus how we behave in the world. Since we are born and raised in the story of our culture, it is all we've ever known, and so we believe this story to be the truth. For most of us, this story is so rooted in our way of seeing the world that we don't even know it exists. To us, it's simply just the way things are. So what is the story of our modern culture? What are the beliefs that shape our understanding of ourselves and the world we live in? What is the story that we live by? And is it possible for us to see this story as a story? Or is it so deeply ingrained in our way of thinking that it is impossible to look at it objectively? Our complex culture lives under the influence of two main stories, the most widely accepted of which tells a tale of us existing as separate bodies in an unintelligent universe made of matter, and through a random and unlikely process of evolution, humanity came to be. The second story tells a tale of us being created by a powerful deity who created us in his image and who is the ruler of this universe, to whom we must worship and respect. These two stories shape the way that our society functions, because they shape the ways in which we as individuals perceive the world, and thus how we act in the world. Our current stories suggest that we live in a world in which our individual lives are of little significance. Our stories promote a worldview in which our survival is dependent upon competition and a struggle to gain resources at any cost, even at the expense of our fellow human beings. Our stories have created a world in which we fight against each other and fight against the natural world in order to survive. And so, we've created a world in which we are rapidly destroying the earth that sustains us in a deluded attempt to further our own survival. If we are to ever be free of the confusion and destruction that is our current way of life, we need to slow down and take a moment to observe the beliefs that shape our understanding of ourselves and ask ourselves with honesty, sincerity, and genuine curiosity whether these beliefs are serving us and whether or not they are actually true. When we change the basic belief structures on which our worldviews are standing, we can change the very world that we live in. And the belief that influences us most of all is our belief in who we are. We need to change our definition of self, because our current definition is that the self is something that is separate from the rest of nature. And this doesn't reflect how reality truly is, because the truth is, we are not separate, isolated beings like our culture leads us to believe. We are all strands in the web of life, parts of the greater whole of nature. And more than that, we are the whole of nature expressed as individual parts. It can be challenging and even frightening for some to change our definition of self and to change beliefs that we have identified with all of our lives. But until we realize this fundamental truth, that our true self is the whole of nature, and that all beings are a part of ourself, then we cannot have peace and harmony on earth. When our actions reflect our understanding of oneness, and have in mind the benefit of the whole, then every action will be one that benefits all beings. But to accomplish this, we have to be able to look at our cultural narratives, question the stories that we live by, and change this worldview of separation by realizing that ultimately all is one. All is self. Around the world, the truth of our oneness is known by native cultures, spiritual traditions, and even some modern scientists. This film aims to give these people of the world the opportunity to share their wisdom with you, with the hopes that you will see we are far more than what our current stories describe us as. I've had the great privilege of traveling to several different countries and learning from spiritual teachers and masters from these countries. The result of this journey is the film that you are now watching. It's my greatest hope that this film can help you realize that you're not separate, you're not alone, but that you're one with everything. It is only our beliefs that separate us. But in reality, all things are and have always been one interconnected whole. If enough of us can realize this truth, we can create a better world for ourselves and for future generations. I began my journey close to home, in search of a Native American tribe that I could learn from. Thankfully, I crossed paths with a wise and brave soul from the Lakota tribe named Chase Iron Eyes. Chase was once a politician, but when the Dakota Access Pipeline threatened his native land of Standing Rock, he gave up his political career and stood up to the corporations that were threatening not only his tribe, but the sacred water of Mother Earth, water that we all depend on for life. Chase shared with me the philosophy of the Lakota people, and exactly why the pipeline was such a threat to his people and to all life on Earth.
The Lakota cosmovision or religion, way of life, mythology, way of knowing, our metaphysics and our epistemology are ancient. They're old as time, older than the concept of time. And the Standing Rock movement tied directly in with our ancient cosmovision, because you remember a phrase, water is life, or mini wichoni. And to say those words, mini wichoni, to say water is life, is a spiritual recognition of the sanctity of water, of a natural element, something that our modern economy, that's sold to us as civilization or civilized ways, doesn't even have the space for the mythological, cosmological foundation and background to even appreciate a worldview that's able to just say water is life, water is sacred. And it's like that because of our knowledge base. We have stories that tell of a time of darkness, is one way to interpret it, but the word in our language is ha. And darkness is not nothing. Darkness, dark energy, dark matter is holding the entire incomprehensible, sacred and infinite expanse together. Science is now able to show this, that 5% of the perceptible universe is what we as human beings are able to kind of avail ourselves of. But during this time, more than geologic ages ago, there was a spirit, a foremost and principal spirit that became lonely and wanted to create of itself. And we, our stories personify this spirit as a male, which I don't know why we do that, but that's not necessarily okay with my daughters. You know what I mean? Like when I tell them these stories, they're like, how could you say that a spirit is male or female? And you really can't. But that's the culture that has been passed down. So I just leave it neutral with an it. This spirit, its name is Iya. And Iya became lonely and wanted to create of itself. In order to do this, it had to sacrifice its own blood and give of itself, create of itself. And it began to spin in motion and spun so violently that it created an explosion of intergalactic universal proportions and created the universe as we know it. But in that process, in giving of itself, it lost its power, its foremost position as the principal spirit, sort of the chief of spirits. And its blood became water. Its blood is water, and its power flowed into the waters and into the blue dome, the atmosphere around Mother Earth, the blue dome that surrounds Mother Earth. That's where Iya's power flowed into, and it became other powers and other spirits. But when we say Mini Wichoni, Iya's blood is what we're talking about. We call every creek, every stream, every river, every source of water, every spring, the bloodline of Mother Earth. And water is all connected. There is no separation of water. Every drop of water is connected. Whether it's groundwater, it's on the surface, or part of the atmosphere, it's all part of the water cycle. A lot of Western academia thinks that we are participating in something that they call animism, where you worship like an animal totem and you do, I mean, and they're trying to understand it, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, but it's not quite that, you know what I mean? It's that they're older than us, and we have to honor and learn from them. That's our identity, our personhood, our nationhood, our existence as people, and our source of creator granted sovereignty, to be able to seek our own destiny, to provide for ourselves in what I call a spiritual economy. Those rights, those authorities, and those sources descend from and come directly from those older beings, whether they're four-legged or the ones that crawl, the ones that fly, the ones that swim, or from the land, the sacred sites, and the waters, or the natural elements themselves, the sky, Mother Earth, the sun, and so forth. We have a whole divine order of a cosmology that I want to share. We have a role to play in re-civilizing the world, adding our voice to the process. You know, everybody was colonized by these forces of capital, of the empirical method or the scientific method. And science is not bad, but it had this effect of presenting itself that, you know, the scientific method and science, empirical science, is the truth, and everything else is like some primitive superstition, and all these ceremonies and these rituals are counter and anti to what, the truth is or the scientific method is. And we don't, we don't view it like that. The ceremonies, the instructions, the gifts that are still alive today are evolutionary in nature. And so it's meant for us to be open, to be worldly, global, and universal in scope, infinite, without end. So science is good. We incorporate science and the scientific method. Anything Western academia, theology, or philosophy, or any of their metaphysics, that's part of their journey. And we're at a point where we can learn that, we can transcend it, because for the longest time those forces have been used to usurp the spiritual authority that we are all born with. That's the process of colonization, the separation of our mind from our spirit, that happened in Europe thousands of years before anybody from Europe landed on our hemisphere. They separated people from their spirit from mind, and from their food source, and even their labor from meaning, the capital, along with currency, the concepts of currency when they were first created, food surpluses, in the very beginning of what has been sold to us as civilization. That process of colonization and results in this separation that we talked about yesterday. There is a very real effort to separate spirit from mind, and connection to people and to the older beings that are in our natural universe. And my effort is try to find ways to help the process of strengthening those connections rather than separating them or abstracting them or dividing them. We need to unify, come together, and know that we each have a spiritual home together on this planet. I talked a lot about the word indigenous. It's another one of those tricky linguistic things, because when we say indigenous, we want to think of the brown people of the jungles of South America, or the term indigenous nudity, for instance, refers to people that are trying to live in a liberated state. And it's for the last couple hundred years, it's been mostly brown people and black people who've been trying to do that. And so our dynamic is kind of set up like that. And it's false. We're all indigenous. We all descend from peoples and traditions and ways of knowing and being that were connected to the natural universe and the natural element. So we all had these cosmovisions. We all had those at one time. And now that you can see the people that like they're seeking that spiritual liberation, they're seeking a way to connect, and they're recreating it. And I'm here just to share, to learn, and to provide guidance at the same time about, hey, this is what has been alive in our cosmovision for untold centuries, multiple millennia. And so that's why I wanted to come into these spaces, just to be available.
According to the Lakota tradition, the universe was born from an eternal spirit named Ea. The Lakota people believe that all of life comes from this spirit and contains this spirit within it. If we stick to the story that all life is made of matter, then this philosophy sounds pretty strange. However, new discoveries in quantum physics are revealing that matter is really a form of energy, and this energy emerges from a source that is beyond space and time, a source that physicist Amit Goswami says is our consciousness. With this in mind, the Lakota philosophy doesn't sound so strange, but actually makes a lot of sense. It is a simple way of describing the truth that there's a domain of reality that exists beyond the world we perceive. Call it Ea, call it spirit, call it consciousness, the quantum field, God, or whatever you'd like. But it is from this domain of reality that everything comes into and out of being.
The Newtonian worldview, which is also called the classical worldview, teaches us that the world is made of matter, material objects, and the interactions of matter represent everything, explain every phenomenon, including what we experience. So fundamentally, because the laws of physics, as Newton formulated it, is deterministic, fundamentally this is just saying that we are machines. And so in applying this philosophy to human beings, obviously we are limiting ourselves only to that part of the human being which is known, which is conditioned, which is a vast part of us, agreed. So certainly this is a description of a good part of us. It's just incomplete. Because if human life was only to live life as you are built, as a machine, then there is no life to live. And indeed, we wouldn't have experiences, we wouldn't have worldviews, we wouldn't have philosophies, we wouldn't have meaning or feeling or intuitions to change and all this. Quantum physics allows us to make a science of all of our experiences, because it fundamentally says that it's not matter which is the ground of being, but consciousness. Quantum physics says from the beginning that quantum objects are waves of potentiality, waves of possibility. And these waves of possibility reside in a domain that is outside of space and time. How is that different from space and time? It is different because communication is instantaneous in that domain. Instantaneous communication means no signal is needed. Instantaneous communication also means that everything in that realm is interconnected instantly, and therefore there is no separateness. What there is unity, one thing. And I have shown in my work that that one thing is our consciousness.
Ancient traditions have suggested that the source of all life is this universal consciousness, from which our individual consciousness is an expression. New studies in quantum physics are beginning to reveal that what these ancient traditions knew was true. This information reveals that not only are we connected physically as bodies that are inseparable from the natural world that sustains us, but we're also spiritually connected by the one source of consciousness from which all life emerges. If there is only one consciousness, and it is from this consciousness that all things emerge, then why does it appear that we each have an individual consciousness? Amit Goswami explains that in order for there to be any experience, there has to be a subject and an object. There has to be the one who observes and the objects that are being observed. Without this subject-object split, there can be no experience. The mind is the medium through which this subject-object split happens, and in this way, the one field of consciousness experiences itself through different mediums, creating the illusion of separation. Yet, this illusion of separation is still a manifestation of the one substance of consciousness.
It's instantly interconnected. There's no separateness. As soon as we manifest ourselves in this world, which is changing quantum potentiality into actuality, we get this subject-object split. I'm looking at you and you're separate from me. It takes me a signal to communicate with you. Now we definitely can explain how this is, because we have understood the mechanism by which brain makes a representation of consciousness in itself. Brain sort of captures consciousness in a loop that consciousness cannot get out of. When you sleep, we get out of it, but then we are into oneness. So either oneness or separateness. The price of separateness is the individuality, because I have to identify with my brain. And my brain is going to develop different sets of memories than your brain, and therefore the individuality as I grow will become bigger and bigger. The brain is a potentiality of matter that is different from the potentiality that makes a rock. A rock is a potentiality in which it can be broken down all the way to elementary particles. Brain is different from a rock. in that it cannot be broken down all the way to elementary particles. It cannot even be broken down all the way to neurons. It cannot, and the neurons cannot be broken down all the way to elementary particles. Each neuron is also a closed-in world by itself, self-creating world by itself. But as potentiality, that is still potentiality of consciousness only. So consciousness itself creates within it this difference of rock-like entities, which is all the way reducible to elementary particles, and then irreducible entities that can capture itself. In that way, consciousness itself separates itself into two, and that's how quantum measurement is made. The whole idea of quantum measurement is the idea of making this loop, this what I call tangled hierarchy. The observer and the observed, this apparent, they feel an apparent separateness. That apparent separateness is into the oneness of consciousness, superimposed on the oneness of consciousness. So oneness of consciousness is still basic. But this one part of consciousness, namely the part with the tangled hierarchies, this part gets an approximate autonomy. So you are very perseverant in thinking that yes, the brain has to have something that is quite different. And indeed, the brain is very special. A living cell is very special. And that specialness is what enables consciousness to speed itself up into a part that feels that it is separate from the rest of the world. So life itself, a living cell itself, has that same tangled hierarchy, so that the same kind of capturing consciousness can happen even for a single cell. So we don't need the brain. But the consciousness that is captured in the brain is capable of having much more experiences. So it's a much more sophisticated consciousness that we experience with the brain. That is also undeniably true. When you do the quantum measurement, try to understand how quantum measurement can occur, this potentiality becoming actuality in the presence of an observer, and then we discovered, yes, the observer's consciousness must be coming from that cosmic consciousness itself.
Everything that is aware shares this substance of consciousness, shares this same spirit. The intelligence within us is but a reflection of the intelligence in nature. We are under the delusion that our consciousness is separate, but it only appears that way through the medium of our individual minds. In reality, there's only one universal consciousness that expresses itself as the appearance of many. So, at our essence, we are one, yet, as the one, we experience ourselves as many. This may seem a bit difficult to wrap your head around, especially when we use the typical logic that we are used to using. To get a better understanding, it might help to introduce a beneficial mindset, a method of thinking that philosopher Tim Freke calls paralogical thinking.
Paralogical thinking, or for short, it's got a both-and thinking. Logical thinking says something is either this or it's that. It is or it isn't. So we're either having this conversation or we're not. It's either Thursday or it isn't. Logical thinking, really good. I mean, I'm a philosopher. I really like logical thinking. I wish people would be a lot more logical than they are. However, if you want to look at the depths of life, you have to go beyond logical thinking. Not to contradictory thinking, but to paralogical thinking, which embraces paradox. So you can think in opposite ways, in a complementary way. So the example which I give in my book, Deep Awake, is the sunset. So this morning, it happens to be true that I got up very early to catch a plane, and I did watch the sunset. There I was, saw the sunset. But someone could say to me equally, no, you didn't, Tim, because there is no sunset. Because actually the Earth is a planet revolving around the sun. The sun does not go anywhere. And both are true. And they're not contradictory. They're just different ways of seeing it. One is my experience, which is the sun comes up, not the sunset, the sunrise actually was this morning, because this comes up, and the other experience is a scientific understanding. Once you get that, you can start seeing these opposites come together. And one of the important opposites in spirituality is between the experience of oneness and the experience of individuality or manyness. Now, a lot of traditional forms of spirituality say that you need to wake up from your individuality, your ego, your separateness, and then you'll have the oneness. It's either or. My experience is that's not true. It's much more interesting than that the two coexist. It's not one or the other, it's both, all one, and we're individuals. And that's important because there's nothing to reject. If you're fighting yourself, if you're fighting your ego, if someone tells you there's something wrong with you, well, God knows there's enough things that you can see about yourself. I can, if someone goes, oh, there's something wrong with you, Tim, I can, do you want the list? And that's in the way, then I'll never wake up to the oneness. But what I found is I don't need to change. I need to change if I want to be a better human being, if I want to evolve, be a better dad, be a better husband, be a better whatever, writer. I need to evolve. But to wake up to my deep being, I don't need to change. It's there the whole time. And when I wake up to it, rather than it taking me away from Tim, I can engage with Tim. I can love him for a start off, which is not easy. And I can engage with his journey. So for me, the paralogical thinking is really important because it can help us go, no, not all one instead of many, but as well as. So let's wake up to the oneness, feel that big love, and then re-engage with the journey, the evolutionary journey of individuating, becoming more individual. And then through that individuality, we wake up more, and then we become more individual, and through that individuality, we wake up to the oneness, and the someone is waking up to the one. And then we're bringing the one, the love, into the world. And we're engaging with an evolutionary process then that's been going on for 13.8 billion years, and we're at the forefront of that process, bringing ever more emergent qualities into existence. You can see this paradox everywhere, actually. There's I love some of the ones in science. One of the deep ones in science is in quantum physics, where Niels Bohr and the early quantum physicists were looking at light. What's light? And in this very famous experiment called the double slit experiment, they discovered that if you set the experiment up one way, light appears as if it's individual pockets of energy. And then if you set it up in another way, it's one wave. And Niels Bohr made this huge jump where he said, look, I don't think it's either one or the other. I think it's both, depending on how you look at it. And that's really profound. He called that theory complementarity, and it's his version of paralogical thinking. It's the same in physics. And what that idea that that it's either discrete entities or it's one wave. And that's the same with us. We're either discrete individuals or there's just one existence. And what I love is that we can move between those perspectives. Oh, there's one. Oh, there's many. Oh, there's one. And we can move between those two. And we don't have to be stuck in either because they're both true in their own way. And the love comes when you have the both. If you just withdraw to the oneness, it's kind of empty. There's quite cold there. But if you're engaged with the body and the journey and the individuality as well, then there's this immense feeling. There's connectivity, there's love. Because we connect because we're two. We connect as one because we appear to be two. And it's that connecting as one through being two, which is the love. The simplest way that I share to wake up is to first of all be conscious of how mysterious existence is, because what that does is it takes you out of the limiting ideas you have. Most of us come into a culture, we become enculturated by a certain story about what reality is, and then we just live in it. So you're not really very conscious at all. So you need to break out of that, and one of the ways of breaking out of that is doubt and questioning and mystery. So just to be here with a sense of just the breathtaking mystery that we exist, and to feel that mystery, that immediately starts to wake you up. And then it's just a matter of what you do with your attention. So it's focus. So if you really focus in on your sensations, you'll start to wake up. And if you really focus back onto that presence we call I, the thing which is experiencing this, then that's where the oneness can profoundly open up. And what I like to do is to do it with each other, so that I can connect in that oneness with you, so that we're both separate individuals connecting, but also one. So for instance, just looking at somebody. If you look on the surface, you just see a face. Oh, that's so-and-so. But if you look deeper, when you look at someone, you're connecting with another conscious being looking back at you. But what you see is the face, and that's amazing. But what you're connecting with, it's like, now, what anyone who's looking at me is connecting with is another conscious being looking back, and you can't see that. It's beyond form. So this awakening starts happening when we pay attention through the form to something which is beyond form. And that sounds really strange until you've experienced it. And then it's not. Actually, it's really obvious in that experiential way. It's experiential. You don't have to just have an idea about it. You can immerse yourself in the actual experience. And the more we do that, the clearer this oneness is. The more we even just intuit the oneness, the more love we have.
In our essence, we are one, yet each of us has an individual experience. To reject our individuality is to deny our most fundamental experience. Yet, if we can understand that our individual awareness emerges from a universal awareness which all beings share, we can wake up to a deeper level of our being, where we realize our unity with all of life. Waking up to this unity gives us a profound sense of love for life, and then, as individuals, we can bring this love into the world. We can embody the very truth of our oneness, and can create a world which recognizes our unity, but respects our individuality as well. Still in the United States, I had the privilege of speaking with another wise soul, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., an author and teacher from the Toltec tradition. The Toltecs were an ancient civilization in Mexico, and while their civilization no longer exists, their tradition lives on through the generations that followed them. One philosophy that the Toltecs had acknowledges the power our individual experience has in creating our collective reality. And I think it is a really simple yet profound philosophy to consider.
The word Toltec is a Nahuatl word that means artist in English, artesano in Spanish. It's a name, of course, but that's what the symbol represents. If I translate the phrase, the Toltec art of transformation, into 100% English, it means the artist path of transformation. I am an artist, and the canvas for my life is my life. Sorry, the canvas for my work of art is my life. Sorry, got a little mixed up there. And that's what the philosophy really is. I can paint the most perfect nightmare, or I can paint the most harmonious dream. And the way my family teaches it is that you could say that as a civilization, it ceased to exist over 500 years ago. It thrived over 500 years ago. You can say that we consider ourselves the descendants of the Teotihuacans, from the Teotihuacan civilization, and from generation to generation, from Tula to all these other places, the civilization blossomed and grew, fell apart, grew. It's just this cycle until the expansion of the Aztecs, expansion of the Spanish Empire, and then you can say it ceased to exist in that way, and it became an oral tradition. To us, the main function of the mind is to dream. Now, mind you, to dream in the Toltec tradition simply is to perceive and to project. So you can say that is the individual dream. I dream when I'm awake, and I dream when I'm asleep. And if the main function of my mind is to dream, then the main function of your mind is to dream as well. Just like every human being in the world, every mind perceives and projects. It's engaging the environment It's imagining things, and from that imagination, if they like it, they'll say yes, and they'll create something. They'll create a work of art. They'll create a business. They'll create a bridge. They'll create a need in a community. And if you see a need that the community needs, then your imagination says, well, how can I fulfill it? And if I fulfill it, how do I go about creating it? And that's how the imagination works. So you can say that's the individual dream. The dream of the planet, you can say it's as small as you and I. Because in our communication and in our interaction, after we shake hands, we still interact mind to mind. And we, like right now, we're using English to understand one another. That's because that allows us to understand, allows me to hear how you perceive the life, how I perceive my life. And from there, we can listen to one another and we create something great. You can say we can create a friendship, we can create a partnership, whatever. Right now, we're working together on this film. So we're working together to create this thing. So you can say that relationship is what we know as the dream of the planet. Or you can say, in this simple form, the dream of us. Because we're interacting with one another, we're understanding one another, and it's as big as 7.5 human beings living life, and it's as small as 3 people in a room talking to one another. Mm-hmm. So for us, that's the dream of the planet. You can call it civilization, you can call it culture. Even though we are part of this, we can create the most perfect nightmare or the most perfect harmonious dream. While we're alive, anything is possible. How do we engage it? Because we don't live isolated in a hill. We don't live isolated in a monastery nor an ashram. We live in our environment. We live in our society. So what do I control? How do I contribute? Because I only control to the tips of my fingers. I don't control the will of another person, nor do I control their perception. I only control my own. So it starts with me. It starts with myself. So if I want to contribute to a harmonious dream, then I begin to create a harmonious dream within myself, to let go of any of those things that created a nightmare within my life. And part of that is to heal from those wounds.
According to the Toltec tradition, each of us is living in our own personal dream, and together we create the dream of the planet. So if we are able to create a harmonious dream within our own minds, we can collectively create a harmonious dream for our planet. To create a harmonious dream within ourselves, we need to look at what is causing disharmony in our lives, whether it is fear, anger, anxiety, judgment, grief, depression, or whatever it may be. We have to look at these wounds that we have, and we have to heal them. We have to accept them, forgive them, and let them go, or else they will continue to create a disharmonious dream for us, and consequently, a disharmonious dream for the planet. The Toltec philosophy shows the connection that our minds have, and just how much we impact the world. It points out the need for us to take responsibility for ourselves, how we live our lives, and how our personal lives affect our community. Continuing on my journey, I packed up my bags and headed south for Guatemala.
Cuántos querido yo te supe dar, solo y herido, así me dejas, sabiendo que mañana irás con otro al altar.
Lake Atitlan in Guatemala is home to many Mayan communities, so I arrived in hopes of finding a Mayan teacher to speak with. Thankfully, I ran into Walter Cancain, a young Mayan spiritual guide who is dedicated to preserving and sharing the wisdom of his ancestors.
Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Walter Walter Quiacaín. Soy originario de aquí, de San Marcos La Laguna. He vivido acá y pues comparto el conocimiento ancestral, los momentos específicos, ¿no? El hablar o compartir sobre los elementos que pueden servirnos de una cierta manera, ¿verdad? Y pues es lo que comparto con los amigos, ¿no? O familiares o gentes de diferentes países. En cierto punto, cuando nosotros entendemos realmente el significado que tienen estos elementos en nuestra vida, ¿verdad? Cómo es que están realizados, cómo es que están unidos en nuestro ser. Creo que eso es un conocimiento muy profundo, a lo cual, si nosotros no llegamos a entender el punto o por qué nosotros estamos acá, puede ser que tengamos un conocimiento sobre libros. Por ejemplo, en nuestros días existe el internet. Realmente, si nosotros conocemos mucho de este conocimiento por parte de los científicos, pero si no definimos con todo lo que hemos aprendido durante o a través de nuestros abuelos, creo que cualquier conocimiento que pueda ser bueno, por mi punto de vista, tendrá que ser como, por ejemplo, un estudio, o tendríamos que integrar estos conocimientos o elaborarlos de una mejor manera, de cierto punto que puedan como unirnos y estar integrados. Eso es para mí el conocimiento ancestral, ¿no? Hasta qué cierto punto nosotros sabemos sobre estos conocimientos o cómo pueden entendernos, a darnos a explicar qué es lo que realmente significan, ¿no? Y pues obviamente que nuestro trabajo, nuestro primer objetivo como persona tendría que ser como despertarnos y darnos cuenta en qué momento estamos viviendo. Eso sería un objetivo principal, cómo nosotros podemos integrar este conocimiento en nuestras vidas. Pues sobre todo, cómo puede ayudar a la gente, ¿verdad? Es muy fácil para nosotros hablar, decir un montón de cosas, pero realmente creo que tenemos que ver a nuestro alrededor cómo está conformado nuestro círculo, de qué está hecho y qué es lo que nosotros estamos haciendo en nuestro círculo, cuál es nuestro objetivo, qué es lo que queremos compartir con nuestro círculo. Entonces creo que son puntos muy importantes para nosotros, como entender el objetivo de cómo ayudar a la gente, ¿no? Y pues básicamente las bases de este conocimiento es que nosotros podamos crecer con nuestra conciencia y entender la conciencia universal, es decir, ir a lo profundo, ¿no? Analizar nuestras acciones, analizar nuestros pensamientos, nuestras emociones, cómo podemos integrarlos en nuestra vida, ¿no? Creo que son estos puntos muy, podríamos decir, esenciales en cómo se basa el conocimiento ancestral, ¿verdad? Cuando decimos tú eres tú o yo soy tú, estamos hablando de cómo es nuestra relación con la naturaleza exactamente, ¿verdad? Si nosotros vemos la naturaleza como parte nuestra, yo creo que estaríamos teniendo otro nivel de conciencia. Y a cierto punto, cuando decimos eso, nos estamos refiriendo a un gran respeto. Estamos dando a entender que estamos hechos de una sola chispa, estamos hechos de una sola, de un mismo espíritu también. Entonces, cuando decimos eso, nos estamos refiriendo a nosotros mismos, es decir, el poder, la energía o el espíritu universal. O sea, tenemos la misma cara de espíritu, ¿no? Pero es decir, aquí en el plano físico, obviamente que físicamente ya es otra cara, ¿no? Pero seguimos teniendo el mismo espíritu. Entonces, este conocimiento es básicamente muy amplio y muy profundo como para entenderlo, ¿no? Es decir, realmente lo que más importa en la vida es desarrollar nuestro crecimiento espiritual. Es decir, yo creo que estamos conectados, pero no estamos conscientes de que estamos conectados. Entonces seguimos en un rumbo que al fin y al cabo no, podríamos decir, no encontramos ese despertar de la conciencia. ¿Por qué? Porque es decir, seguimos todavía en ondas muy bajas de las vibraciones. Entonces creo que es por eso que nosotros llegamos a sentir esa desconexión, llegamos a sentir o a ver ese punto, ¿verdad? Entonces mi otro consejo podría ser no sé, identificar realmente nuestras facultades, nuestros errores, porque si pedimos a alguien que nos diga cosas hermosas de la misma persona, creo que nos va a cantar mucho, nos va a decir muchas cosas, pero tratamos de esconder el lado negativo, y ese es donde hay que enfocarnos más, ¿no? ¿Por qué se les dice negativo? ¿Por qué se les dice mal? ¿Por qué se les dice oscuro, no? Entonces son puntos en general que hay que enfocarnos en qué está constituido ese punto.
Walter shared with us the teachings of his Mayan ancestors and how they understood that we all share the same spirit and that the whole of nature is a part of ourself. He suggests that since we all share the same spirit, it is important that we cultivate our spiritual awareness and learn how to live at peace with ourselves and others. After Guatemala, I headed further south to Peru, a land renowned for its shamanic and mystic traditions. There, I had the privilege of meeting Maestro Juan Gabriel, an elder from the Q'ero Nation. I spoke with him and his daughter-in-law, Caroline Putnam, who traveled to Peru several years ago and ended up staying as she fell in love with Juan Gabriel's son. Together, Caroline and Juan founded Revivolution, an organization created to preserve and share the wisdom of indigenous people. They now host retreats in Peru and travel abroad, offering ceremonies and sharing the teachings of the Q'ero people.
Bueno, mi nombre es Juan Gabriel Paz Lunasco, de Nación Queros. En mi trabajo, maestro de sabiduría. Pampamisayo es dar una ofrenda, preparar, leer lecturas, mamacuca, después hacen una ofrenda, dar tawantinsuyo. Bien. Pachamama, Apo, Cóndor, Águila, Taita, Mamaquilla, Mamacoche. Bien, eso es Pampamisayo, dar una ofrenda. Está clima cambiado, igualito personas está cambiado. Religiones, bastante. ¿Dónde faltan religiones? Ese no vale. Papá Dios. No es Papá Dios, Pachamama. Intitaita, Mamaquilla, Cóndor, Águila. Papá Dios, sí, juntos, contactamos. ¿Quién es Papá Dios? Todo, Papá Dios, todo es rezar, orar, saumear. Entonces, despacio nomás, aprendes. Sin pensar, aprendes, son corazón, sin cabeza, aprendes. Eso es, sabe corazón. Rezar Pachamama, Taita Mamaquilla, eso es corazón. No es obligar cada maestro, cada persona, no, porque conciencia, aprender, saber, con Sofía, entonces eso es. Ya, opilé son culé.
Okay, my name is Caroline Putnam, and I'm originally from Louisiana in the United States. And I've been living in Peru for the last 5 years, and I've been working with Juan Gabriel. And together we created an organization called Revivolution, which supports indigenous wisdom to thrive in the modern world. And I'm really supporting people to integrate those teachings into daily life practice. I learned how simple it is, spirituality or connection is. It doesn't need to be mystical. It doesn't need to be over the top. It doesn't need to be visionary. I don't need to leave my body. I'm here as a person of the earth. And my job at this moment is to be grounded in that and to know how every decision that I make affects others. Living in another country itself really can break down many barriers. You really start to understand the cultural context and the way that we were formed in society. And so going beyond those boundaries of not feeling comfortable to speak a language or things like that, they really break down different aspects of yourself and build up the true essence. And so speaking to Juan Gabriel and his family, when they're only speaking Quechua and we're sitting on a dirt floor and we're chewing coca and eating potatoes, we're speaking only what's necessary and the basic. And so this heart language comes out. And I really appreciate the carol because of how playful they are. There's not a day passes that they just don't like play music and dance, and it's joyful, and it doesn't have to be serious and rigid. And praying doesn't only have to be in ceremony. It's like every moment of the day, any moment of the day is fine, no matter where you are. So I really appreciate the groundedness of what it means to be human and to be alive. I wrote my first blog, and it was about protecting Mother Earth, or remembering Mother Earth and sharing with her. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't eat organic food. And I just dropped it all in one day. I was like, went from my budget didn't change. It's not like I all of a sudden had more income or anything. I just made a value and a statement, like a value for my life, and said, if I'm praying for the Mother Earth, I really need to follow up with that, with my tangible action. And so I really looked at the things in my life that were being imported. Even though in Peru there's this beautiful market and everything looks fresh and organic, there's people walking around with spray bottles every day. I see them spraying the farms. So I really picked out and know who I'm buying from and who I'm supporting. And the reason that ties into the connection to the earth is because when I'm buying food that's chemicals, I'm actually voting for mining companies to go into his community and mine out the chemicals that we need, destroy their environment, give them false jobs for like a year, destroy the environment, and leave a disaster behind, and want the children to move more into the city and get normal jobs and all of this to be forgotten. And so I'm voting every time that I spend, and I really find that connection through consumership. And then we can take it to the next level, and the next level I can talk about my clothes. I can actually make a garden. There's so many ways to approach that, and then we can speak about it on a spiritual level in my prayer, your prayer, our prayer. But more recently than not, over the last year, that some of the teachings finally sank in on a more personal level, and prayer was a big one. Really praying, and not only praying, but making offerings, whether it's just water that I have with me, or wine and rum as we do in our tradition, or sugar or sweets or just anything. And not only waiting until I was around a maestro, but actually taking that initiative in my own life. That shifted a lot, and I can really see creation and the collaboration that happens whenever we pray and communicate. And so now I really feel that a lot, and I'm sure there's deeper levels to experience. So in my understanding, where the balance of everything exists within us and without us, and in a more grounded way. And I think we got real grounded just sharing that even just a baby growing in the womb receives the spirit of the man, or the seed of the man, and grows in the physical body of the woman. And so Pachamama is the physical mother. She's that nurturer and gives nutrients to us through food, through water, through air. And spirit is the masculine, is the spirit that lives within us. And so it's the both that are combined into the whole. And that exists both within us as well as all around us. And so the honorings and the offerings and the prayer are the recognition of the Great Mother and the Great Father that flows through all of life. It's the whole of creation.
Juan and Caroline understand that there is a spirit in nature, an intelligence or consciousness that lives through all things, a spirit that we must remember to connect with. but they also give great importance to the earth and remind us of the need to connect to the spirit in the land and to honor the elements that give us life. Their devotion to Mother Earth is something that I found inspiring, and my meeting with them gave me a deeper appreciation for the land and a new understanding of how to connect with it. Still in Peru, I headed north to the Amazon rainforest to experience an Amazonian brew commonly known as ayahuasca. The Shipibo tribe call this brew uni, which means knowledge in their language. To them, it is a master plant that heals us and teaches us the ways of nature. This visionary brew is seen as medicine to the tribes of the Amazon and is never taken in the context of recreation or celebration. In fact, it is often a very unpleasant and challenging experience that causes us to face our fears, our traumas, and the many things that hide within our shadow, so that we may heal from these things and be free. I arrived in the town of Iquitos and headed up the river to a remote boat dock, where I then hiked an hour into the jungle, reaching an ayahuasca healing center called the Temple of the Way of Light. At the center, I sat in 4 ayahuasca ceremonies, led by 2 Shipibo maestros, and I had some of the most profound and transformative experiences of my life. The experiences are deeply personal and extremely hard to put into words, but I realized without a shadow of a doubt that I am one with the whole of nature. Not only am I a part of the whole, but I am the whole, expressing itself as an individual part, just as the ocean expresses itself in individual waves. I realized that I am not limited to my material body, but that my true nature is immaterial. My awareness is not bound to this body. It is free, ever-present, and unchanging. It is the still and eternal witness, observing and participating in this beautiful, moving art piece that we call life. As Shaman Don Jose Campos says, consciousness never dies. It is always there. That is what I see with ayahuasca. I feel that ayahuasca takes away the masks we have, and it shows you who you are. I had already learned so much in Guatemala and Peru, but my journey wasn't over yet. Next, I headed to the mystical land of India, a place celebrated for its many spiritual traditions. Here in India, I spoke with Swami Shantatmananda Saraswati, a teacher of the Advaita Vedanta tradition.
My name is Swami Shantatmananda Saraswati. I teach Advaita Vedanta here with Shankara Bhashya. I've learnt my studies from Swami Paramarthananda Saraswati from Chennai and from Swami Dayanand Saraswati in Rishikesh, as well as from few other teachers who belongs to Swami Dayananda's tradition, like Swami Brahma Vidyananda and various other Shastris as well in Chennai. All that is here is one whole being. It is you. That is the teaching of Advaita Vedanta. Essentially everything is nothing but me, myself. Therefore, all that is there is only one whole being. When I say, when the Shastra says, when I say means when the tradition and the Shastra says, it is all that is here, everything that is here is one whole being. It is consciousness, it is existence. We call it as Satchitananda. In simple words, it's a very big word to be discovered, really speaking. We call it as simple words because it's more known in this manner as Satchidananda, because everybody you ask would say that it's Satchidananda, Satchidananda. Whether they know it or not, they just say Satchidananda. A more common word, a parlance being used by people. So, and for one to discover that it is one whole being, one needs to take away that element of limitations that is superimposed upon that object. You call a thing, you say it is limited by its form, it is limited by its name, it is limited by its utility or by its actions, by its properties. Vedanta analyzes what is that substance really speaking. What do you call? Sat, the truth, the innate nature, the essential nature. It happens to be the being of man. Correct? That beingness is Sat. The existence, in other words. Chit is consciousness. When you say existence, the existence thing becomes as though it is a very dumb kind of an inert thing. What is existence? Within me, I recognize it as consciousness. The same existence within me, when it comes to me, it is a conscious thing. That means existence, when it is manifest in the mind, it gets another name called consciousness. Mind is an element which makes you a conscious thing, which makes you a conscious being. It is the manifesting medium. That's how it is. It manifests. Existence, very same existence, is nothing but consciousness, Chit. And this Sat and Chit, once understood as me, myself, I discover that all that is here is nothing but me, Anantam. And when I say all that is here is nothing but me, I have now eradicated the sense of limitation. Once the sense of limitation leaves me, all that is there is only a limitless being. When I have discovered myself to be limitless, I don't need anything in order to be accomplished for me to be called a full person, a total person. I am contented with what I am, correct? Because it has included everything in this creation. If it's included everything in this creation, all that is there is only me. When you say, you rest contented with yourself, Ananda. That is Ananda. And Ananda is not any laughing or smiling here. That is the Ananda. Satchidananda. Simple words. And you as Atma is all the time free. You are ever free. Ever unlimited. You are never limited by anything. This is your intrinsic nature. But you don't see that. You forget it. You don't see that. And since that's because of ignorance, I don't see. Because I am ignorant about myself. My true essential nature is not known to me. And this nature not known to me is in fact eradicated by wake of knowledge. So knowledge makes you see the fact that you are already free. The ever-evident fact that I am free has to be claimed by me. That is called moksha. There is no other moksha. The very same witness consciousness is existing here in this creation as the being of every object. What we call as existence or being, that existence is isness. When you talk about an object, you say it isness. When you talk about me, you call it amness. That isness and amness is all the time equated. If I discover that I am not the body, I am not the mind, and I come to Atma to see that I am of the nature of pure witness consciousness who is all pervasive here, you will understand from that standpoint there is no whiff of a difference between me and Ishvara. Between this Jiva and Ishvara, there is no whiff of a difference.
What is it that cannot be seen which makes seeing possible? What is it that cannot be heard that makes listening possible? What is it that can't be touched that makes touch possible? What is it that can't be imagined that makes imagination possible? And what that's pointing to is our deep being. And our deep being is right now is looking, but it hasn't got a shape or it's got no colour. Shapes and colours are what it sees. They're objects. The subject has no colour. The subject has no texture. You can't touch it. The subject, you can't hear it. It makes no noise. But it's listening to everything. And what that points to is this incredibly deep realization that the depths of our being has no form. That this end of our being has form, but this end of our being has no form. It's just being. It's just the presence of being. And the journey of awakening is that you wake up from the form to the formless. To this thing which is looking but you can't see. And then from there, you can then bring that oneness into the world, and that oneness in the world manifests as love. I've had the advantage of the opportunity to study a lot of traditions and write books on them. And they're all different, and they all have different flavours. But there's something they've all got in common, which is the deeper you go, you can see that what they're really pointing to is a natural state of awakening, the thing I call deep awakening. It's a natural human state. So a bit like you can go around the world and you'll always find food. Why? Because people eat. Is it the same food? No, it's really different food, but it's all food. And they're eating it because it's nutritious. Same with spirituality. It's all different. But go underneath and it's all fundamentally about shifting consciousness from this to this deep awake state. So you come across it again and again. There is a fundamental non-dual oneness. And what matters is love and the wisdom to express it.
Consciousness as the ground of being certainly is what people refer to as pure consciousness, or Christianity tradition refers to as Godhead, Hinduism refers to as Brahman, and many other names. Judaism has the name Ein Sof. They're all the same thing, that oneness.
I think that all spiritual traditions point to the same place. They all point to the openness of beingness, to our natural state as awakeness, to our natural state as love, to our natural state as light, and that it's called different things. It's the different traditions, because of the language that they use and the concepts that they use, will be interpreted and translated by us as individuals on the path of seeking in different ways, and that's where the confusion is. Seeing, when we say seeing ourselves in others, what we're seeing is the beingness that informs all of life that informs you, that informs me, that informs the one that I hate or don't like, that informs the one that is harming me. Beingness or consciousness is all there is. Out of that beingness and consciousness, then all forms arise. When we can really see that, there's a natural rising of compassion. But not seeing the other separate individual with their personality and their humanity as who we are, but seeing what's deeper than that. And that's where the real oneness is. That's where the real, I wouldn't call it connection, because connection still implies that there's a you and a me. Real oneness is beyond even connection. And then compassion arises naturally out of that, because when everything is seen as one beingness, one consciousness, expressing itself or manifesting itself through all forms, then how essentially there's only one. There's lots of individuals and things that appear in that one, but then all born of the one. So how can you harm the one that is who you are, or that is what you are? It becomes almost impossible to harm anything. So when I speak about awakening, I'm talking about waking up out of the dream of separation. And the dream of separation is the ego's perspective. That there's a me here and a you there, or a me here and the world out there, or a me here and life out there. And what's out there happens to me. And if it happens to me, it's either good or bad. It's either what I want or what I don't want. And if it's what I don't want, or what I don't like, or what hurts, or what's difficult, or what's challenging, then I'm a victim of that. Because I'm going to feel bad, I'm going to feel small, I'm going to feel disempowered, or I'm going to feel challenged, or I'm going to feel hurt. And if I feel all those things, then I'm a victim of those so-called negative feelings and thoughts. And if I'm a victim of my own thinking and my own feeling, then I'm a victim of an illusory world of the imagination. And if I'm a victim, then I'm separate from the totality. I stand outside of life, and life is doing this to me. And that's the dream of the ego's paradigm. And so then the ego is primed for defense and attack, to protect itself from what it doesn't like, it doesn't want, what's threatening, and to attack that. And attack comes in the form of judgment, it comes in the form of righteousness, it comes in the form of any kind of grievance that we hold. And that's the dream of separation that we live in, that's created a paradigm of suffering in the world, of psychological suffering, which then gets manifest as the suffering of the world itself. So we're waking up out of that. When I speak about awakening, it's waking up out of the illusion that there's anything outside of me doing something to me. And in that awakening, we discover that we are the totality of life, that the totality of life is happening inside me, as me, because who I am is not this separate body, although I am that as well, but actually what I really am is the space within which everything happens. And if I'm the space within which everything happens, then nothing can ultimately hurt me.
Again, I was assured that our true nature is consciousness, that we have mistaken our identity with our ego, our body, and our mind, but that our true self is the one reality that underlies everything. I was beginning to see clearly that we aren't aware of this pure consciousness because our minds are so distracted. We think constantly, and we have lost the ability to simply be and rest in our being without being disturbed by thoughts. If we want to realize our true nature, the consciousness that lies at our core, we need more than an intellectual understanding of it. We need to experience it directly. And this can only really be done in silence when the mind is still. Just as you can't see through the surface of a lake when it is disturbed by waves, you can't look deeper into your being when the mind is disturbed by thoughts. We have to still our minds and allow ourselves to rest in mental silence. Then our true nature is revealed, the consciousness that lies beneath the thoughts, beneath the worries, the fears, and the stories we tell ourselves. You are not this body. You are not this mind. You are not your name, your career, your accomplishments, your roles in life, your education, your self-image, or what anyone thinks of you. These are all things we have confused our true identity with. You are pure awareness. You are the witness of everything, the seer that can't be seen, the listener that can't be heard, the sensor that can't be sensed. Just as fire cannot burn itself, and a knife cannot cut itself, you, as consciousness, cannot be aware of yourself, for you are awareness itself, the one who is always observing, and this observing presence is essential for the existence of everything. Think about it. How could anything exist without someone there to experience it? Who would know it existed? You are the essential ingredient in life, the one that brings the world into form. You are the formless presence in which everything exists. This pure awareness is the true nature of you, your family, your friends, your pets. Every living being has at their core this pure awareness. This is the unchanging reality that lies at the source of all life. Seeking more knowledge about this universal consciousness, I headed further east to the country of Nepal. In Nepal, I was in search of a teacher from the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. This tradition teaches what they call Dzogchen, or the Great Perfection, and it is a teaching that claims our true nature is pristine, ever-present awareness, and it is completely whole and perfect just as it is. They say that all we need to do is realize we are already whole from the start, and there's nothing we have to seek outside of ourselves. They call this pure awareness Rigpa, and they resemble it to a mirror. Just as a mirror reflects every image within it, but is never affected by the reflections, so too does awareness reflect all experience, yet remains untouched by every experience. We have mistaken our identity for the reflections in the mirror, but if we can realize our true nature as the mirror that is reflecting, we can find freedom and peace. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to interview anyone from the tradition, but I did get the privilege of spending 10 days at the Kopan Monastery in Kathmandu, an experience that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Leaving Nepal, I headed even further east to central China's Wudang Mountains, a land renowned for its natural beauty, martial arts, and rich Taoist culture. Here I stayed with Master Gu, a Taoist master and teacher of Tai Chi. The beauty of Wudang Mountains was astonishing, and of all my travels, I felt most at home here at Master Gu's small home on a mountain tea plantation. The environment was calm and peaceful, the nature surrounding us was beautiful, and in such a short time, I felt like I was a part of a family. Master Gu taught about the simple and natural philosophy of Taoism, and how living in harmony with nature, we can achieve balance and harmony within ourselves.
The Taoist practice, the Taoist objective is to remain one, to achieve oneness. If there is two, there is a problem. You and yourself has conflict. So how to get rid of this? No one can avoid having ego, but don't let this ego, even like covering the real self. The Taoist practice is to be a 真人, literally true person, true man, like Zhang Sanfeng. He has the name Zhang Zhenren, the true man of Zhang. So what is a true man? So if you have two, hardly you can achieve a true man. The true man is just going back to the original one, the natural one. We say 道无形无相. Dao, shapeless. It does not have a very fixed form. Dao is everywhere. Dao can be in you. Or you are the symbol of Dao, and you can also be the same as the symbol of Dao. In these regards, everyone is collective because we are all one part of the Tao. There is a saying for Taoism, 其大无外，其小无内. It means Tao is so big, so great that it has no boundary, no edge. It can be as small as you never find the end. This way, we mean if we have the same feeling, same sense, or same following of the Tao everywhere we are, we say, 天下道友是一家, all Taoist friends under the heaven is one family. If you can realize you are one with the Tao, you will achieve your peace.
Around the world, there are traditions and people that know with absolute certainty that we are one. Yet we don't always feel this in our lives. Most people seem to have no sense of this oneness at all, but instead feel rather separate, as if they are victims of the world, doomed to a life of isolation. I wondered why this is, and I discovered that it was because of our belief in who we are, a belief that is shared by our society and adopted by us at birth. This belief is so deeply ingrained in our minds that most of us aren't even aware of it. To us, it is simply seen as the truth, but in reality, it isn't the truth. And because we are identified with this belief, we form a false sense of self, and we live our lives invested in protecting and validating the existence of this false identity. While we are all one, we are also individuals. Both are true. We're like individual branches emerging from a single tree. There's nothing wrong with embracing our uniqueness as individual branches, but if we don't remember we're part of a single tree, we feel lost and separate from all of the other branches and from the tree itself. We even become capable of harming the other branches as well as the tree itself, as we forget that essentially there is no division between us. Traveling to different countries has taught me so many things, but what I realized most was that what I had been seeking for so long was something that already existed within me. I was seeking to know my true self. I looked for it all around the world, only to realize the obvious truth that since it is who I am, it is with me always. I can only forget my true nature when I confuse my identity with my thoughts, beliefs, and self-image, but I can never lose the essential consciousness that I am. I realized that my awareness is far more involved in this universe than I had previously thought. I'm not just some insignificant creature on a lonely planet. I am one with the source of all life. We're not victims in the world, but rather, each one of us is creating the world we wish to live in. Unaware of our true nature, we have created a world full of disharmony and destruction. But we can change that. We can create a new world together, one founded on love, on kindness, on care for the earth, on respect for other living beings, and the realization of our unity. It all boils down to choice. We choose whether we want to pretend to be victims of life, or whether we want to take responsibility for our lives. We choose whether we want to live in fear and invest in our self-image, or live in love and just be our natural selves. We choose whether we want to create something beautiful, or continue creating a violent world based on a false belief in separation. We choose whether we want to see through the lens of separation, or whether we want to awaken to the truth that all beings are a part of the whole of nature. All are family. All is one. All is self. The essential nature of experience is the consciousness that shines in each one of us as the experience of being aware. This awareness is the aspect of experience that can't be removed, and it is shared by all beings. It is equally available to all people at all times, regardless of circumstances, age, race, gender, nationality, or religion. Realizing our true nature as awareness is the foundation of inner peace. Thus, it is the foundation of world peace. If we, as individuals, can awaken to the peace within us, then naturally it will create peace in the world. All that is required is for us to realize that our own fundamental existence is shared with the existence of all beings, and to live the implications of this realization in all realms of life. Once we shift our definition of self to include all beings, then the world can heal. Then the world can change. Then the world can live in peace. Thank you for taking the time to watch this film. I hope that it was able to point you to the truth of who you really are, because you are far more than this isolated ego personality that feels itself to be separate from nature. In truth, there is no separation in nature. All beings are an extension of the total universe. The whole of nature is expressing itself through us. And if we can realize this wholeness, this energy, and this awareness within ourselves, then we can recognize it within others as well. And we can see that there's no separation between us. And when we realize that all beings are a part of ourself, then naturally this love, this compassion, and this kindness will arise within our hearts, and we'll begin acting in ways that are motivated by this love. We'll begin wanting to be of service to nature, to be of service to humanity. And this is what the world really needs, because the problems in the world today are a result of a worldview based on separation, on seeing ourselves as separate from the whole of nature, on seeing ourselves as separate from each other. This is what allows for us to cause harm to the environment without realizing how it affects us. This is what allows us to cause harm to one another without realizing the repercussions of our actions. Because what causes harm to nature, what causes harm to another, causes harm to ourselves. And what brings happiness to another brings happiness to ourselves. So if we can realize this truth within us, and if we can be inspired by it to act in ways that honor this truth, that honor nature, that honor life, then I'm certain we can create positive change in our world. If you'd like to learn more about what this film discussed, I've also written a book with the same title, All is Self, and it's available as a paperback or as a free ebook that you can download in the link below this video. Now, I've made this documentary and this book available for free because I want it to help people to awaken to this truth within us, to realize our connection to nature, our connection with each other. But it was not free for me to make these. It cost a lot of my money, a lot of my time and energy putting all of this together. So if you feel called to support me in this work so that I can continue making more videos, continue writing books, continue creating content that's available for free, then please consider donating and supporting me so that I can continue to do this. And I've also provided a link to my Patreon account in the description below this video. And Patreon is a platform that allows people to support creators for the work that they do. And it also comes along with different benefits depending on the subscription that you do. So it's a monthly subscription based platform, and donating $1 you get access to articles and blogs and posts that are exclusive to Patreon. If you donate $5 you get access to podcasts that I'll be doing every single week on Patreon exclusively. And there's other tiers of subscription that give you different benefits based on what you feel like donating. So if you feel called to, and if you're able to support me in this work, it's really appreciated. It really helps me so that I can continue doing this. So thank you again for taking the time to watch this film. May it inspire you to realize this truth within yourself and to act in ways that honor this truth, that honor nature, that honor other living beings. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free.
Open your heart, be a lover of what is. Open your heart, let everything in. Open your heart, let the universe in. Open your heart, let everyone in. Be a lover of what is, making love with the world. In the bowl of your heart, an emanation of light, light, light. Open your heart, let everything in. Open your heart, be a lover of this. Open your heart, let everyone in. Surrender yourself with selfless devotion, be in service to love.